Yes, welcome in. Badgers getting ready for their trip to Iowa coming up on Saturday night. It is Halloween, Jesse. Anything scary going on in your world?
Uh, I'm sure the decorations outside the houses will be during trick-or-treating time, as long
How
as it
many?
doesn't
Go
rain.
ahead. I was gonna say how many times have you guys has your son gone through like different costumes? Is he just like has he decided on? He obviously decided on something here. It's the day of.
We got 3 options. We got Spider-Man, we got a firefighter, and we got an astronaut. So, it may be, to use a football cliche, a game time decision.
It is Halloween, and Wisconsin still getting ready for that trip to Iowa, and we're going to get into all of it, exactly what success looks like down there against the Hawkeyes. Going to talk about this past weekend which was a big weekend for recruiting, and even though Wisconsin did not win the game, there was some winning happening on the recruiting front because of the environment that was there, and obviously going to get into our week 10 picks already. We are getting late into the season, final game of October, and then obviously, I should say, first game of November for Wisconsin, final day of October for us. Before we get started, though, as always, Home Field Apparel is the official apparel sponsor of the camp. We have they have a ton of new Wisconsin gear over the last few months up at homefieldapparel.com. Go check it out. Homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code Bucky24 for 15% off your first purchase. Before we jump into the show, Jesse, I know this is not for everybody because not everyone enjoys Wisconsin basketball, but we are going to be starting the swing today, actually. Later this morning, going to be recording with Wisconsin coach Greg Gard. You're going to be able to check that out wherever you get your podcasts and also on YouTube as well. For anybody that's unaware, we do put our shows for the camp and the swing up on YouTube. It's the camp podcast page, so go search that out. All right, all that out of the way. Let's get to Wisconsin and Iowa. What does success look like? The Badgers looking to grab that Heartland Trophy back because they have lost it the last 2 years. I should say they lost the game the last 2 years, and Iowa has not won 3 in a row in this series since they won 4 in a row back in the mid-2000s. For you against Iowa, what does success look like?
So many different things I think Wisconsin has to do well. You go back to a year ago when Braden Locke was thrown into the fire for his first real college snaps. And he, like so many people before him, learned very quickly what it's like to face an Iowa defense where he fumbled the ball away on what ended up being a safety, lost another fumble, threw an interception on his final pass, and Wisconsin lost 15-6. So Braden talked about it this week. Can't make those kinds of mistakes because Iowa is very good in all 3 phases. I think it comes down to the trenches, though, in my mind. This is Wisconsin, Iowa, after all. So can Wisconsin establish the run after really struggling a week ago against Penn State? And defensively, man, how do they stop Caleb Johnson? That dude is a machine this year. He's averaging 143 yards rushing a game, which is second in the country behind only Boise State's Ashton Junty, who's a Heisman Trophy candidate. He's got 16 rushing touchdowns, which is the 3rd most in a single season in Iowa history. And oh, by the way, there's still a month left in the regular season. And it's not like he's a guy who's just a 3 yards in a cloud of dust running back. He's averaging almost 8 yards a carry. Like, that's some Melvin Gordon territory right there. And he's got a bunch of 20-plus yard runs. So I think it's stopping him, containing Brendan Sullivan, who's more of a mobile quarterback. We've seen Wisconsin struggle like they did in the second half against Bo Pribula last week and against Jalen Milroe earlier this season. I mean, we can get a lot more in depth into all of these categories, but off the top, those are the things that stand out most. Can you win the trenches against Iowa?
Yeah, last year against Iowa, they actually did a pretty good job against the run for the most part, except for one play. And that one play was a 82-yard touchdown by LaShawn Williams. Caleb Johnson in that game, 17 carries, 35 yards. I suspect he's probably going to have a little bit more success on Saturday just because that's what they do. And they are – I mean, we can talk about them not having Cade McNamara because he is not going to play. He's got a concussion, so he's not playing. It'll be Brendan Sullivan, who Wisconsin has played before. He was the starting quarterback for Northwestern in the first game after Paul Chryst got fired, when Wisconsin went down to Northwestern and beat them 42-7. He wasn't horrible by any stretch, but he also didn't light it up. And the thing that he brings that Cade McNamara does not is the ability to run. And he had, I think, 43 yards last week against Northwestern when he came in relief. So that's a part of this equation as well. We saw Wisconsin struggle with that with Pribula, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, the good news for Wisconsin is they've got an entire week to prepare for this. That was part of the struggle, I think, a week ago. But I was going to make it tough. I mean, here's the other thing is the last few years, you could count on the fact that Iowa's offense stunk. Okay, they've got an upper echelon defense, and their offense stinks. And so if you can just win the game 12-10, that'll be good enough. They've got a competent offense. This is the best offense they've had in 4 years statistically in terms of scoring offense. They've scored 40-plus points in 3 different games this season, and obviously bringing a new offensive coordinator in Tim Lester has really paid dividends in year one. So I don't think you can just say, we got to win this game 10-7. Like, you might have to score a couple touchdowns, which is not something you necessarily always have to do against Iowa.
I think they've scored at least 31 in 5 of their 8 games. Is that what you said?
I mean, it was 40 plus in 3, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in 5 of the 8 games that they've played, the only ones that they didn't was at Ohio State, at home against Iowa State, and then at Michigan State. So at home, they have been putting up some big time points, and at home they're also much better defensively too. Like when they've given up a bunch of points, it's been on the road. 32 at Michigan State, 35 at Ohio State. So like they're a good home team, and throwing this and a little extra log on the fire is the fact that it's going to be a night game, and there's going to be even more juice in that building. And it's the first night game Wisconsin will play at Iowa. I think I'm trying to think what the game was in 2020. I think it was a day game. But since 2018, the famous 2018 game where the Badgers that we thought we were going to see on a regular basis showed up to play Iowa, and Alex Hornibrook was tossing the ball over the field, and they beat Iowa thanks to a touchdown to A.J. Taylor late in that game. But this is a different Iowa team for sure. They still can't throw the ball. I mean, they are 100 and I think they're 124th. What was it? 128th in passing offense. But they haven't really needed to because of how good that running game has been for the Hawkeyes. Can Wisconsin, in your mind, slow their running game?
Yeah, I think they can. It's a matter of how much can you slow it, because this is the challenge too, is what are you doing on first and second down to get to a third down situation where Iowa's got to throw the ball? Like, if they can load up, if they know, all right, they don't have much of a passing game, they're going to get some pressure on Sullivan and it's going to be okay. That's a good sign. If it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 consistently, Wisconsin's just, I don't see them winning that matchup enough to win the game, because they've got such a great running back. So they've played better. I don't think the defense was bad against Penn State by any stretch. I mean, they'd given up 7 points by the time they got to the fourth quarter. Obviously, there was a pick 6, but that wasn't the defense's fault. So I think I'm encouraged by what they've done, and I think they can do it. It's just a matter of, can you put yourself in a good position so Iowa isn't controlling the sticks consistently?
And that was a problem last week, where Penn State was getting so much on first down, so many yards on first down, that they were put in very manageable. And we talked about that on Sunday. They were put in so many manageable positions to convert on third down. That's why they were so good on third down. When you only have to go an average of, I think it was like 4.9 yards, that's pretty darn good. And a lot of that in the second half was big run plays on first down. So again, Penn State, a lot more dynamic in the passing game than Iowa, but still, there's going to be some heads hitting there in the trenches, and Wisconsin needs to win it. And they certainly haven't done it offensively against Iowa of late, but defensively they have. But this is a different Iowa team who's just more developed, I would say, run game wise, especially with Tim Lester and some of the things that he's brought with him from his time, not just as a head coach, but last year being with the Packers and some of the stuff that they do with the Shanahan style of run game. So uh, that is one part of this. For Wisconsin's offense, can they run the ball against an Iowa defense that stops the run well? Again, this Iowa defense, let's be fair about it, it's not the Iowa defense of last year, like it's or the year before. It is a very good defense. It is not like a vintage Iowa defense. Wisconsin's offense, I think, can have some success. The key, though, is obviously not being in 3rd and long on a regular basis like they were the other night, because then you're setting yourself up for failure. So can they find some success on 1st down that they did not find a ton of last week? And I think that has to do with throwing the ball. And I know you don't want to be in 2nd and long. I get that. But if you're in 2nd and 9 because you got 1 yard because no one thinks you're going to throw the ball on 1st down, that's going to be a problem. They threw the ball 11 times on 1st down last week. I think they have to do it more than that. Before the final drive. Before that final drive of the game last week, they can't wait till the final drive to start throwing on 1st down. But they were 6 of 11 on throwing the ball on 1st down before that final drive against Penn State. I feel like maybe there needs to be a little bit more of that and a little bit more early. But we'll find out very quickly whether they trust the quarterback to do that or not. Because that to me is as big of a question as anything. Do you believe that do you believe in your quarterback?
Right. And a year ago, Iowa did have a top 5 defense in some of those key statistical categories. And so that's kind of been the standard at Iowa. So you're right. They're not quite at that level, but they are still a top 15, top 20, top 25 type of defense.
Yep.
So they're still very good, and they're going to make it exceptionally difficult on Wisconsin. I think the matchup, very clearly, you have to identify where's Jay Higgins on the field. He leads the Big Ten in tackles. He had 3 straight games of 14 tackles this season. And a year ago against Wisconsin, he had 13 tackles and recovered a fumble. Obviously, there are other guys, but he's the star. And so can you find him and prevent him from blowing up plays? But yes, you're going to have to put at least some of this on Braden Locke. And so what does that look like? We've talked before about, well, do you just try to find ways to get the ball out of his hands a little bit quicker on short or intermediate throws and hope your playmakers can get you 5 to 7 yards so you're in a manageable down and distance type situation? Are you going to take a handful of shots down the field? I keep coming back to something we've talked about for weeks, is just avoid the catastrophic mistake. It sounds very obvious, but we saw what happened a week ago. And in a matchup like this, where I don't think there's going to be a lot of touchdowns, that's the last thing you want to do against a team like Iowa. So, yeah, that's obvious every week. But when you've got a starting quarterback who's been picked and every start he's had this season has 7 turnovers in 5 games, it's a delicate balance you have to strike as the offensive coordinator. And Braden, too, on when do you be aggressive and when do you make the smart decision, and how do you balance the run with the pass? But you're going to have an effective run game. Otherwise, you're putting even more on Braden, which I don't think is the situation they want to be in.
Me personally, I think I've just been accused of being overreactionary. I've been accused of being negative this week, and I don't know that those are inaccurate statements. But that said, I think I'm just at the point where I'm going to accept the fact that there's going to be a big mistake or two from Braden Locke. That's where I'm at this year. I'm not saying it can improve, whatever it is. He has shown us that it's going to happen, but they have to give him chances to make up for that with some of the passing on 1st down. Let him take some shots down the field. The offensive line, I think Pro Football Focus had it. They're top 10 among fewest pressures allowed this year. So is Iowa, but Iowa throws the ball not very, very much. But like they have done a good enough job to be counted on in that respect, and to believe that they are going to be able to hold up even against a good defense. Is it wrong to say that I've accepted that? I mean, I don't think Wisconsin's accepted that. I don't think they want that, but I think I've accepted the idea that he's going to have one of those 1 or 2 plays that are going to be significant, and you just have to give him more opportunities to make bigger plays. You can't just be running, because you are afraid of that. You can't just be running Tui Walker into the line with, on 1st and 2nd down. You have to open it up. You have to be aggressive. And I know, that could lead to some bad things. I get that. And maybe they just feel so good about their defense being able to slow Iowa's offense that it doesn't matter. I think that's kind of where they were at times last year, or last week. It kind of, I think that they struggle to figure out whether to be aggressive or conservative, and kind of like stuck in no man's land at times. But I think on Saturday, because at some point there probably is going to be a mistake, I think you just got to go for it, because you can't make up for a huge mistake if you're just going to be handing the ball off twice and then making him throw on third down or whatever it is.
Yeah, I don't know where I fall on this. I don't know that I would say I've accepted that there's almost like a guaranteed mistake. Obviously, what you see in the 5 games indicate that there has been, but then I go back to a year ago where EA lost a couple fumbles. He had 1 interception in the 3.5 starts, so he's capable of putting it together. I just think you got to manage a game to put him in a spot to be successful. But even when you do that, it's up to Braden to make the right decisions. This is just, I don't know that this is the matchup that you want coming off the type of performances that he's had, because we talk about that so-called get right game against a Purdue or whatever, and this is absolutely not one of them. So I don't know what the balance looks like, but I can understand your point.
Again, I know that is just an asinine thing to say. Just that, oh yeah, I've come to accept it, but I've come to accept it. I'm not saying Wisconsin's accepted it. They are clearly not. They, based on the way that they played last week, they clearly are worried about it. But I just don't think you can go in and win unless you are just so positive and so confident that your defense, and it'll be game flow, right? The game flow will kind of decide exactly how everything looks. I don't think you want to be in a situation where you're going back and Iowa knows you're going to pass. You have to be keep them off balance. And I think that's on Phil Longo to figure it out, to try and keep them a little off kilter. And we'll see exactly what that looks like. But Braden Locke has made enough plays to be given a little bit of a little bit of a longer leash when it comes to that. He has made some big time throws, and he's had some guys. They need to catch the ball. They need to desperately catch the ball better than they did last week. And they obviously need to try and run the ball a little bit better as well. But Braden Locke has made enough plays that you could give him a little bit. Likely, probably, that there's going to be a mistake or two within a play, and going to throw the ball where it's not supposed to go, and it could be a huge play. But I think as I think I'm repeating myself over and over again, you can't just turtle. You have to be able to try and get some explosive plays against this defense, and just any defense, but this defense specifically.
Because of how much of a slog they make it, because of how many plays are going to be 3-yard gains. And that's why getting even a couple of big shots, and they have the guys can do it. Vinny Anthony has really emerged. We talked about that. If Tretch can catch the ball, what he does after it, Will Pauling too. So, and CJ Williams, I mean, they've got the guys. So you got to take your handful of shots and hope that it works out at least once or twice. I mean, I go back to when Tyler Van Dyke was healthy, what he was talking about leading into the Alabama game. You can't stop taking those shots. You may go 2 for 6 or something like that, and that may not seem like a high percentage, but if you get 1 or 2 big hitters, that completely changes the complexion of a game.
Yeah, and Iowa has given up some passing yards this year. I think they're ranked in the 50s or the 60s in terms of passing yards allowed per game. Some of that has to do with how good they've been stopping the run, but there's no Cooper DeJean, right? It's going to be an interesting game. It's definitely going to be an interesting game. I think a lot of it probably will come down to the play of the quarterbacks, because we know the importance of Braden Locke and the ability to throw the ball. Brennan Sullivan's a little bit of a wild card. He has barely played in terms of throwing the ball. I think he's got 94 yards this year, but he is a threat running, and he can obviously throw the ball, but it's how exactly do they attack Wisconsin, and is Wisconsin going to be ready to try and slow them down on first down? I think that first down is obviously just a huge, huge key on both sides. And I know that's probably being obvious, but can Wisconsin stay out of 3rd and long, and can the defense keep teams in 3rd and long? Because they just weren't able to do it last week. So special teams also, I feel like whenever you talk about Iowa, it's always special teams. They have routinely had some of the best special teams in the country. Wisconsin this year, punting wise, certainly, and some of the stuff that they've done, I feel like they have taken a step up this year, punting wise. And I believe Atticus Bertram's now on the Ray Guy Award watch list after his fake punt last week.
Well, I mean, well deserved. He is, I don't know, is he the MVP of the team? That's not always a good thing, but he's certainly in the conversation. And when you're in a matchup like this, field position matters so much. How many times have you seen it when Iowa had Torrey Taylor and he could just hit a 65-yard punt and all of a sudden you're inside your 10-yard line? So Bertram's has shown that he has that ability, and that's going to matter a lot when Saturday night arrives.
Atticus Bertram's is 7th in the country in punting average, which I wonder when the last time a Wisconsin punter finished ahead of an Iowa punter in that respect. But he's also put 14 inside the 20s, so it's not just about the ability to boom one, right? It's ability to put teams in bad situations, and he's done a really, really good job at that time after time. And the defense, I think, has certainly benefited from it. He's been fantastic. We know what Nathaniel Vakos did kicking wise last week, a couple big field goals, including another one from 50 plus. So I think Wisconsin, special teams wise, at least in the kicking game, can hold their own in this one. And I don't know if we said that a ton against Iowa in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I would agree. Those two guys, I think Wisconsin did a really good job of identifying we need a transfer portal player. Let's go get somebody and see if they're ready now. And if they're not, they'll develop. Vakos was ready right away. He had a really good freshman season at Ohio. Bertram's needed some seasoning, and that was a tough spot to be thrown into. He was from Australia, ended up coming here. It was his first college action a year ago, and it just didn't match what your expectations were. But he's taken maybe the biggest leap out of anybody from year over year where they were a year ago. So absolutely, it's going to be huge on Saturday.
For sure. All right, let's get into a little bit of something else here. Wisconsin did not win last Saturday night. They lost to Penn State. It was 28-13, right? Yet it was a big recruiting weekend. It was probably their biggest recruiting weekend of the season. And while the game did not turn out the way that they wanted it to, the environment certainly was. The environment certainly was exactly what they were hoping for. I thought the crowd was really good. It's always a little bit difficult to tell, especially inside the new press box where they do not open the windows very often anymore. That it's always a little bit difficult to tell how the game is. But I think you could tell from the players, and you could tell just how involved the fans were, that it was a really good environment. And I think that helps in the recruiting front. So even though they lost, they did win a little bit here recruiting wise.
Yeah, I wrote a story about this that published on The Athletic on Thursday, and the jury is still out on how much they won because these guys haven't made their recruiting decisions yet. But that was the premise of the story.
Should I have put a question mark at winning when you lose?
Maybe. But the premise was, can you lose a big game and still win long-term as a program? And I think what they were able to do on the recruiting front is something we'll be monitoring for the next year or two. But it was the biggest recruiting weekend they've had all season. And a big reason for this, and we talked about this going into the Penn State game, was the fact that it was a 6:30 game on NBC. That gives them an opportunity to spread their recruiting wings across the country in a way that they just can't when they open the season against Western Michigan on Friday night and all these kids are playing in their own games, or even when they play Alabama at 11 a.m. How can you fly from California after you've got a night game and get there even in time for kickoff? You can't. So this was a chance for them to bring about 30 guys to campus, 7 uncommitted 4-star prospects, at least according to the 24/7 Sports composite. You got a couple guys from California, including a 2026 quarterback in Ryan Hopkins. You got 3 guys from Georgia, including their top 2027 target in Teddy Girard. And so that is so important. But then what happens during game day is huge. And so the fact that it was sold out, it really was an electric type of atmosphere. That's what the Girard told me when I talked to him this week. That stuff is so important because I think the initial inclination, and I heard this from fans, even after they got the tight end, Emmett Bork, was like, oh, he saw that on Saturday and he decided to commit to Wisconsin. First of all, he'd made that decision before that game, but one game does not dictate what a recruit is going to do. Now, if you go 0-12, that's going to be a problem, but I think it's the environment that they remember most. And the guy that I talked to the most for this story is a 4-star linebacker from Ventura, California, named Tristan Phillips. And I think this highlights the importance of what that atmosphere is like. Wisconsin's like the 4th school he's already taken a game day visit to. And over the next 5 Saturdays, he's going to be at a different school every week. Cal, Arizona, Oklahoma, a couple others on the West Coast. It's insane. And so when you're going to that many schools, you better have a damn good atmosphere to make that guy remember why Wisconsin should be included atop the list. And that's exactly what it did for him. He's already planning to take an official visit. And so his ability to come in early, spend the day around the staffers, talk to the coaches, talk to the recruiting guys, get a feel for campus and the game day atmosphere makes all the difference in the world. So obviously Wisconsin lost, but it was a close game. And the other thing you want to show if you're going to lose is, are you building towards something in the future? And I think that these guys at least feel that that's the case right now under Luke Fickell.
And there were a bunch of committed prospects there as well. Do they play a significant role there too in some of the guys that are uncommitted, even though they may not be in the same class?
Well, I think they have to some degree. You're spending time around these guys, and they put all these recruits in the same general area, like the first couple rows along the 20-yard line. So they're together. But that's part of the reason I think commits come at times when uncommitted guys are there, so they can sell the program. Well, why did you choose it? Here's why I like it. Here's what I've seen over the last few months. That has to matter at least a little. But I mean, these guys have to take every little tidbit and absorb it and figure out if this is going to be the best place for me. But I think it's noteworthy that they're bringing in the type of caliber players they're bringing in right now, because the results on the field have not met expectations. But I don't know how you can sit here and say they haven't done a really good job in recruiting to date, based on the schools they had offered and the rankings and all that. So they've got to continue to build on that so you can see the results a couple years from now.
Yeah, I'm interested to see exactly, like we've talked about the official visits in June and how many guys that they've ended up signing. I wonder, guys that make their first visit to Wisconsin or at least here for a game, how many that ended up going to the Penn State game. I know you said it's not just one game, but it gives you a feel of what it potentially could be. End up being guys that come here. I think that's something to watch.
I think there's going to be a few, certainly, guys that are still interested in Wisconsin and whose interest has grown because of what they got to experience.
And also, this isn't easy for guys either. I mean, you think about these guys. I mean, the guy plays on Friday night, drives to LAX, gets out a red eye, comes to Chicago, and then has to come up to Madison. It's not easy to do. So to put together a night like that and an experience like that, I think is just so valuable. Because like if they do all this stuff, and you take them to Buffalo Wild Wings for and that's it. And I want to talk about that in a second. I don't know if you saw this or not, but that's it. Gosh, yikes. You know what I mean? So the experience absolutely matters because they're putting a lot of effort in getting here. That you have to perform once you're here.
Right. It's a lot of time and money because these are unofficials. And so these families have to set up these visits. I go back to Teddy Gerard, the 2027 quarterback. He played a road game on Friday night, was great, 300 plus yards, 4 touchdowns, only 2 incompletions. He said it took him 2 hours to get home. It's 1 a.m. He went to sleep at 2 a.m. They woke up at 4 to take a flight out of Atlanta to get to Chicago and then drive to Madison to get there before noon. Like, it's absolutely insane what these guys have to do just to make it. And that's why having a night game matters to get some of these out-of-state guys there. Obviously, they're putting in that commitment because they have a lot of faith in what Wisconsin can mean to them. But you better deliver on the product once they show up. And I think at the very least, for some of those guys, they feel very good about what they saw.
All right. So that is a lot of those guys were class of 2026 guys. There's a class of 2025 guy that just reopened his commitment. His name is Carter Smith. He is a quarterback, and he was committed to Michigan. But Michigan, because of various reasons, I think most notably probably Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports, they are chasing the number one recruit in the class of 2025 who's already committed. What's his name? Underwood's the last name. What's his first name?
Is it Bryce Underwood?
Yeah, so they're chasing him. He's a quarterback, and Dave Portnoy has said that he's willing to spend up to $3 million to get Michigan a quarterback, which after this year, looking at Michigan's quarterbacks, I certainly understand. But he's a fantastic player. But what that has led to is the commit that Wisconsin, or I should say the commit that Michigan had in their 2025 class has reopened his commitment or his recruitment. And Carter Smith, I think he's one of the top dual threat quarterbacks in this class, and Wisconsin has been connected to him. Right now, Wisconsin has a commitment from Landon Locke, the brother of Braden Locke, who tore his ACL. Landon tore his ACL this year. Has not, I mean, if we're being fair, has not played a ton of football as a starting quarterback for his team down there in Texas. And Wisconsin apparently is involved, or at least trying to get involved, with Carter Smith.
I think we can safely say it's clear Wisconsin is kicking the tires on this situation. And why wouldn't you? I've said many times before, this staff has shown that they're going to continue to pursue guys if they believe it can improve the status of the program. This is a top 15 quarterback. And we had this conversation on the last show because I wrote the story about, well, what could Wisconsin's quarterback options be for next season? And none of them are really ideal, especially when you consider you've got young guys that aren't in a position to play right away. And I'm not saying that Smith would be, but what can you do to help yourself? And this decommitment certainly opens the door to a quarterback who has a lot of talent, previously wasn't available, and you're at a stage in the game where you've had the signing period in December that almost all those guys are taken. So Wisconsin, not the only program that's been linked here. Clemson certainly in the mix. I think LSU's in the mix, but I have to imagine that they would be open to this situation if you are already committed to a Big Ten program and you see an opportunity where you could contribute early or be a part of this class. Wisconsin's just not going to stop until they figure out their quarterback situation. So this is a very intriguing one to watch.
So he's almost 6'4". He's from Fort Myers. He's probably could put on a little weight, but like that's a lot of high school quarterbacks. But it is interesting that they're kicking the tires because, again, I don't. When you look at Landon Locke, you just don't have a ton of film to go off of. And I know that Phil Longo went down there, worked him out, and offered him. I don't know, was it on the spot? It was almost on the spot, wasn't it?
It was a while ago. It was an early identification, and obviously the relationship helped.
Right, but like before he had played a single snap of varsity football, right? Because he was not the starting quarterback last year. I think he split time, and this year was going to be his year, and he was off to a solid start, and then he obviously got hurt. But the unknown there, and he goes back to our conversation earlier this week, as you said, where you don't unless you see them play, you don't know, and that's even more so in high school too. Like if you don't see them play in high school, much less see play college, you don't know. And I think it's probably not ideal just to stay with it just because that's what you did, a year ago or a year and a half ago. You have to continue to evaluate, and this is clear, I think, looking like one of those situations where you're trying to evaluate whether Landon Locke is the guy and is the only guy.
Yeah, I certainly would wonder, and this is obviously speculation, but if you pursue another quarterback and land him, then how does the first guy feel? We've seen some instances previously over the years where you go and get a second quarterback. I think way back when they got Chase Wolf, and Ben Bryant was at the time at least committed and very soon after decommitted and had a college journey of many schools. But just I don't know that always works out with multiple quarterbacks, and also I don't know what the staff feels or what Phil Longo would feel when those relationships are so important and you're putting your trust in one guy, but you got to get the best guy. Like it's winning now. Winning matters so much that if there's a guy available and he's receptive to it, you pursue it.
So you think Phil Longo's okay with this?
Well, I'm sure he's part of the conversation. But I don't know exactly what those conversations look like. I do know though that Wisconsin is going to see what's possible here.
So before we move on from this recruiting conversation, I needed to bring this up. I mentioned it, Buffalo Wild Wings to visit because A.J. Dillon, the Packers running back who is out this year. He was on a podcast. I think Tune Into Dylan. I've never heard of it before yesterday, but they dressed up and he's like wearing this ridiculous costume as he's doing it. So it's hilarious. But either way, he's reading a note from Wisconsin. You can see the W on it, and it's like, we're sorry that you didn't have a good time on your visit. And this would have been the class. He was in class as of 2017, but we're really sorry you didn't have a good time on your visit. Apparently, they went to Buffalo Wild Wings, and like that was the extent of the visit. I can't imagine that was the extent of the visit. Like, I feel like he's probably playing that up just a little bit. But he said that was the only thing they do is the most boring visit he's ever had. And he obviously ended up going to Boston College, which worked out just fine for Wisconsin, because instead of A.J. Dillon, who was a very nice college running back and has been an okay pro, the Badgers got Jonathan Taylor instead. And Jonathan Taylor ran for nearly 2,000 yards in 3 straight seasons and has gone on and had a great NFL career. I think it worked out for Wisconsin very, very well. So, but there were some shots taken at the Paul Chryst recruiting department with with that clip that came out.
Yeah, I also think the timing of the visit matters and when he came up. I don't think it was like a summer day with a bunch of other guys. I don't know the circumstances surrounding that one, but I think you don't have to win with all of them. You just got to win with the right ones. And they certainly were able to do that in landing Jonathan Taylor and pulling him away from his initial Rutgers commitment. But not a great look, certainly for Wisconsin in retrospect. And how hilarious that you would then send a note. I wonder who found out that he didn't enjoy himself. What was that conversation like? And then choosing to write a letter apologizing for you not enjoying your visit. It's all over for you at that point.
Ridiculous. It's again, I'm not saying that whatever, but because we don't know exactly how the visit went, but if that's how the visit went, that was it. Yikes. All right, let's get into our Week 10 picks. We both went 3-4 this past weekend, so not ideal for either of us, but we're still above 500. You're 6 games above 500. You're cruising, and I'm 1 game behind you. So let's start with this. Number 18, Pitt, on the road at SMU, 20th ranked Mustangs, are 7.5-point favorites in that game.
Pitt is one of 8 undefeated teams in the FBS, and they're averaging 41 points a game, which I think is 6th in the country. I know it's a road game. 7.5 feels like a ton. And so I'm going to go with Pitt. I think they're legit. And obviously they don't even have to win this game for me to win.
I'm gonna roll with Pitt on the road at SMU. SMU needed to fight off a valiant effort from Duke the other last weekend to win. The points are a lot, so I'm gonna take Pitt on the road there. Florida and Georgia meeting in Jacksonville, the world's largest cocktail party. Georgia is the second-ranked team in the country. They are 16.5-point favorites in this one over DJ Lagway and the Gators, because obviously Graham Mertz is not playing. He is out for the year.
I'm going to go with Georgia in this one. I know that's a big number, but they're coming off a 30-15 win against Texas, and you could say, well, that's really emotional. There's going to be a letdown, except it's Florida, Georgia. I mean, that's as big a deal as it gets, and it's a huge rivalry game. I just think Georgia's got it going on, and it's not like Lagway didn't put up great numbers against Kentucky, but they had a running back who had 5 rushing touchdowns. I don't see that happening against Georgia.
Yeah, I think it is a big number. Florida is playing better. I know that Billy Napier's probably going to be fired at the end of the year, but they have shown a little bit of fight of late. I can't imagine that he was able to hold on to his job. If they were to win this game, though, that would certainly show perhaps the direction of a program. They're not going to win this game, but I think they are going to cover. Indiana, still unbeaten, going on the road to take on Michigan State. The Hoosiers are 8-point favorites on the road.
Michigan State really surprised me with the way that it handled Iowa a few weeks ago.
At home?
Yeah, but it's just what Indiana's doing. It's the story of college football, and I'm on all aboard the train. I think they're going to continue to roll. So the Hoosiers not only win, but they cover.
Yeah, Indiana's offense, and it sounds like Rourke might be back. Perhaps, maybe. I don't know. The quarterback, obviously. Trace Jackson Davis's brother is their backup. Did you know that?
I did not.
I found that out last week. He ended up playing. He only has Jackson as his last name. He doesn't have Jackson Davis. But yeah, I want to say Michigan State covers, but Indiana does feel like a team that is. I'm not going to call it a team of destiny by any stretch, but just has so much confidence and just rolling that I'm gonna go with them as well. This one caught me off guard, if I'm being completely honest. I had to check this multiple times. Minnesota on the road at number 24 Illinois. Minnesota's a 3-point favorite.
Also surprising to me, I know Illinois got housed by Oregon, but
Who didn't?
I've got more faith in the Illini, especially at home. I mean, Minnesota's a solid team, but I can't see them going on the road and winning, let alone covering. So I'm going to go Illinois.
Yeah, there's me. I'm certainly not going to pick PJ Fleck to go on the road and win. It could happen, but did Illinois all of a sudden just get bad? I mean, in Minnesota's spanked the last. I think they've won 3 straight or 4 straight, and that included a win over USC. It also included an escape against UCLA. So Minnesota does feel like they are going up, but I'm going to take Illinois at home. Oregon traveling to Michigan. The Ducks obviously unbeaten and 14.5-point favorites on the road.
That is a massive number at Michigan Stadium. On the other hand, I think I've learned my lesson, even though this will be the week it turns on me. I did not pick Oregon to cover 27.5 against Purdue. They destroyed Purdue. I didn't pick Oregon to cover, I think it was 21.5 against Illinois. Oregon is just the best team right now, the best team that certainly Wisconsin's going to face in a couple of weeks. And I think they're going to cover at Michigan.
Yeah. The Michigan defense, I think, obviously is the best part of the team, right? But they could be without Will Johnson, their star corner. I feel like Oregon, again, just an absolute wagon since the start of the season, since Dylan Gabriel has figured things out and the defense continues to improve. I'm going to take Oregon as well on the road, even though that is a significant number. The game of the week in the country, Ohio State, a 3.5-point favorite, traveling to unbeaten and number 3 Penn State. And Ohio State apparently going to be down a couple of offensive linemen. Penn State coming off a win over Wisconsin. We'll see if Drew Aller's going to play. If he doesn't, obviously Pravila did what he needed to do against Wisconsin. What do you got in this one?
This is one of those games where I feel like the home field advantage is going to be massive. I mean, they get 100,000 plus in there. I think, look, I don't know if Penn State's going to win, but I like them with 3.5 points to work with. They have such a dynamic offense. To have the backup quarterback do what he did, I mean, if he's going to play, he's going to have all week to know he's going to play. And they've got the best tight end in the game. I think I'm picking Penn State in this one.
Aller is practicing, for what it's worth. I did see video of him out on the field yesterday. So he is practicing. Whether he plays or not, I guess we'll find out. I like Penn State at home as well. Ohio State, and maybe this is just maybe not giving enough credit to Nebraska and what they did defensively to Ohio State last week, but there is enough, at least, angst among Ohio State fans and some of the stuff that they've seen, in offensively for sure, to go into this game. I know it's at 11. I mean, I guess it's a noon game out there. Place is going to be rocking. I'm gonna take Penn State. Probably, I don't have to do this, but I'm going to take them outright to win. Doesn't really matter, but I'm going to take them outright to win. Wisconsin at Iowa, the Hawkeyes 3-point favorites in the battle for the Heartland Trophy.
When you cover a team every day, you see a lot of the flaws, and you tend to focus on that. I don't see Wisconsin getting out of there with a win. I think the night game atmosphere is going to be a big deal. We've been there at Kinnick. The fans are right on top of you. It's going to be rowdy. It's probably going to be electric. Obviously, it comes down to the players and their ability to execute. But I would say that in the big games, that's been severely lacking for Wisconsin. And so this is not a ranked opponent, but it's still a very good Iowa team that's going to make life difficult. And there's just so many factors at play that Iowa's got this really strong rushing attack. I don't know what Wisconsin's going to provide offensively against a good Iowa defense. I think Iowa wins this thing 20-14. I don't expect a ton of points, but I think they're going to cover.
Yeah, Wisconsin's not won down at Kinnick since 2018. They used to do it on a regular basis. If you remember, they won there in 2013, they won in there in 2014, they won there in 2016, they won there in 2018. Have not done it the last 2 times. I don't think they're going to do it on Saturday night. Obviously the huge concern is the stopping of the run. There's been some fantastic night-ish games there, though. It reminded me like 10 years ago, Melvin Gordon went down there, and it was the week after the Nebraska game when he had run for 408. I don't know if it was they might have had a bye. I don't know. Either way, they went down to Iowa, and he just had a monster game, put up 200 yards against that defense. And but Joel Stave with the scramble to seal it for the Badgers is obviously the play that everyone remembers. But Saturday night, yeah, I think it's tough. I'm not trying to be negative here at all. I feel like Wisconsin needs to come out and be aggressive, and don't try and play conservative just because that's what you do against Iowa. I think you got to be aggressive and take your shots, and if it doesn't go, it doesn't go. I know that's probably not what they're going to do, but it's kind of what I think a lot of people are hoping they will. So we'll see. I'm going to take Iowa in that one. All right, we'll be back on Sunday to talk all about Wisconsin and Iowa. Look ahead to a bye week as the Badgers will get some time off before welcoming in number 1, potentially Oregon, the following week. Jesse, again, anybody else that missed it? I don't know how you could, because I said at the beginning of the show, but we're going to be doing the swing later this morning. Greg Garr going to be joining us, so check that out as well. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, there he is, Jesse Temple from The Athletic. You've been listening to The Camp.